Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on unlocking the power of employee engagement surveys. And I hope you will find this an informative information session. Thank you for taking the time out this morning to join me. Those of you that haven't used Crowdcast before will need to know a few things to begin with. So the webinars at the moment are live. All webinars are recorded and available on demand. So if you like what you hear this morning and you want to watch it again, you can do so using the same link that you signed up for this webinar. Also, now that you've registered with Crowdcast, you will be able to go back quite easily into my own library of webinars and watch any of those recordings available. So I've started in the chat box. I see a few of you are introducing yourself, which is wonderful. If you haven't, don't be shy. Feel free to do so. So good morning, Andy, Jody, and Michael. You're all very welcome. Some very familiar names this morning. So we've just got 30 minutes to cover what we're going to go through. So let me get started. So for those of you that maybe don't know me, I think many of you do, but there are some people which will be watching this that haven't, and they'll be watching a recording. So my name is Julie Allen. I have been supporting SMEs to create great places to work for over 25 years. How I do that is helping employers with employee engagement, developing emotional intelligence of leaders through the Trait Emotional Intelligence Questionnaire, also coaching in relation to psychological flexibility, and helping organisations create psychologically safe workplaces. Some of the key things that are really important in today's workforce, and I'll explain why as I go through this session. Feel free, as I'm covering the content, just to include any comments, messages or questions in the chat box, and I will keep an eye on those. So what are we going to cover this morning? What we're going to look at is what is employee engagement and how then does disengagement impact on employee satisfaction, retention and organisational growth. This is a topic that is really important in today's competitive world. We're going to look at what the key drivers are that boost employee engagement. We're going to be looking at the advantages of an anonymous third-party survey to measure engagement. We're also going to look at the essential metrics to track engagement effectively. And we are going to then look at taking action. So what is employee engagement? The definition here of employee engagement that I am using is from Gallup. Gallup are the global leader on collecting employee engagement statistics. I'm going to come back and explain that with some statistics as we move forward. So Gallup define employee engagement as the involvement and enthusiasm of employees in both their work and workplace. The measure of your employee engagement represents how your employees are feeling, developing in, and thinking about their jobs. So what I'd like you to do this morning is just start to ask yourself some questions in relation to what we're talking about. How do you think your employees feel about working in your organisation? How do they feel they are developing in their job? And what do you think they're thinking about the job that they're in? And again, I've said this is critical in today's competitive workforce, and I'll come back to explaining why. So, well, first of all, why is employee engagement important at a top level business results level? And what we can see here is, again, if we look at Gallup's analysis, what we will see is if we compare top quartile organisations with bottom quarter businesses quartile, I should say, what we will see then is those higher quartile organizations will have fewer negative outcomes and greater organizational success. So you'll see things like lower absence, lower shrinkage, lower safety incidents, lower quality issues, higher level of employee loyalty, higher levels of productivity, profitability, well-being, and also participation. If we look at it, Gallup estimate that low employee engagement costs the global economy about $7.8 trillion, and that accounts for 11% of the GDP globally. Few slip up of words this morning. So why is this important? Because it could potentially be costing you money, and that's what I want to come to. So what could you do in your organization to work out how employee engagement might be affecting your organization, even if we just took salary costs? So again, Gallup estimate that a not engaged employee could be costing your organization 18% of its annual salary. So what I've done here is I've taken a little example for you. And if we have an organization with 50 employees, 30% of the workforce are disengaged. That's 15 employees. If we take the average salary in the UK, in terms of an example, that's all I can do. But you want to work this out for your organization, estimating what you think your engagement levels might be. I'm going to give you some benchmarks in a few moments, so you'll be able to do that better. So what's the average salary in your organization? That'll be easy for you to run off. And so if we take 15 employees and we multiply that by 34,963, that's the average salary in the UK. Appreciate that's not what it's perhaps going to be in Northern Ireland or wherever you are watching this from. Then take 18% of that total. And in this case, disengagement could be costing this organization 94,400. So what's it costing you? And the question really is, are your leaders, are you enabling your team to bring their best selves to work? And if you don't think you are, what could you do better? And hopefully I'll provide you with some examples and ideas to do so. So I talked about sharing some benchmarks with you. And again, Gallup conduct a global state of the workforce survey on an annual basis. The 2024 report highlighted that 23% of the global workforce are engaged. In Europe, it's 23%. And in the UK and Northern Ireland, it's 10%. So 10%, if you think about what that is costing organizations here, it's huge. If organizations want to grow, this is one of the areas to focus on because we know it's going to impact on productivity, profitability, customer loyalty, reduction in accidents, absenteeism, really a huge area to focus in terms of improving organizational growth. What Gallup also told us was that 41% of the global workforce are experiencing stress on a daily basis. In Europe, that's 37%, and in the UK and Northern Ireland, it's 40%. So think about your workforce. We talked about engagement was about how people feel at work. Now, I'm not suggesting that the stress is always coming from work because we live in a stressful world at the moment, a world that's ever changing. But they will be bringing stress wherever it's coming from into the workplace. So that's another area that you've really got to consider. 21% of the global workforce are experiencing anger daily. If we look at Europe, that's 15%. But if we look at UK and Ireland, then it's 40%. So more anger in the UK and Northern Ireland than other regions. Again, you may be seeing this in your organisation. One of the key statistics that you'll need to remember, and those of you that have been talking to me recently will know I keep repeating this statistic. In 2018, Korn Ferry predicted that there would be a global talent shortage of over 85 million by 2030. The shortages you are experiencing at the moment are only going to get worse. So you're going to be at the moment working harder to recruit people. When you do go out to recruit, you will find that the number of people applying for those jobs will be much less than before. Certainly in Northern Ireland and the UK, our unemployment rates are at the lowest they have been for some time. In Northern Ireland, we have another difficulty in that we have 27.5% of the working age population as they are economically inactive. So there's a large proportion of the workforce not looking for work. One of the other statistics that we need to look with it is 52% of the global workforce are intent on leaving their jobs. Jobs aren't for life anymore. People are looking at where is better for them to work. They know what's important for them. If we look at it in Europe, it's 32%, and in the UK and Northern Ireland, it's lower at 20%. But again, just do the maths. Take the numbers in your team, the numbers in your organisation, and take 20% of that. That's what your staff turnover could look like. It could be more than that. So employee engagement is critical. You want to ensure that your employees really enjoy their job. They feel that they're getting reward and being developed, because otherwise they'll go somewhere else. And there are plenty of other vacancies to do that at the moment. There is a real war for talent at the moment. And really, this should be a real area, a top priority for organisations. At a global level, again, Korn Ferry, that should, I think, also be Mackenzie Health Institute, identified that 22% of the global workforce are burnt out. So 41% experiencing stress and 22% then experiencing burnout. So this sets the scene for us in terms of employee engagement, in the feeling and the thinking and the developing in the workforce. So what do we need to be doing in terms of employee engagement? So in terms of employee engagement, there are 7 key engagement drivers, is my view of the model that I use. The first there is culture and values. So thinking about, what is it like to work in your organisation? What does your organisation value? Do you have a set of values? Do those values reflect what it is like to work in your organisation? Are those the words that your people would use? If not, why not? What is it you need to do to improve that? Health and well-being, again, a key engagement driver, a real area of focus in today's world. In terms of health and well-being, we know that absence rates have been rising. We know that the Generation Zs put much more emphasis on their well-being. Some of the older generations would see it as a sense of pride going through a working year without any absence levels. That just doesn't happen with Generation Z. If they feel they're ill, they'll take time off. Real focus on mental health. We know that there is a huge issue in terms of mental health. So the question here is, what are you doing in your organisation in terms of health and well-being? Again, perhaps even compare yourselves to your competitors. What are they offering that you aren't? Communication and involvement, another a critical driver. How do you communicate with your employees? What channels do you have? How do you hear the voice of your employees? How do you know what they're feeling and thinking? How do you involve them in decision making within their team at a level appropriate to them? What kind of levels of feedback even perhaps do they have? So again, even another driver then is direction and performance, which links back to feedback both at an organisation, team and individual level. In terms of direction, what's the organisational vision and objectives? Do your people know that? Are they just coming in blindly? Are they aware of what you're really trying to achieve? And are they passionate about doing that? Work processes. Do the work processes work effectively for them to be productive? What do you do in terms of gathering information from them in terms of what works and what doesn't? And the key theme running through this is, are you listening? Opportunities for growth. Are there opportunities for growth? This webinar is for SMEs, so the opportunities for growth will be limited, perhaps. But this is not just about career development, it is about skills development. If there is a global talent shortage, you want to be thinking about developing people from within, because it's going to be harder to find them outside. You need to be bringing people in likely that don't have the skills and training them up. So do people feel that they're getting the development they need to perform at their best? That's always the key question. Are we enabling people to bring their best selves, to perform at their best, to be productive? People want to feel good about themselves. And lastly, we've got leadership, teamwork, and relationships. Really, again, if we look at Gallup would say that 70% of the variance of employee engagement falls with managers. You have the ability as a leader to make people feel great, or you have the ability as a leader to make people feel not so great. Again, Gallup would say that you have more influence on an individual's well-being than their doctor, because you spend more time with them. Just think about the influence and impact that you have on those individuals. What can you do to make that better? So in terms of employee engagement surveys, these are the 7 engagement drivers that I focus on with organisations to identify those strengths and also those areas of development. So let's look at what are the benefits of an anonymous third-party survey, or even just a survey that you might conduct yourself. Well, first of all, what you're trying to do is to give employees a voice. You're asking your people to give you honest answers. It helps you to see that they are heard and that they are valued by responding to the feedback and also taking action. If you're conducting regular, I would encourage annual employee engagement surveys so that you can look at trend data over those years, look at where you're improving and where things might be slipping. As a result of doing those surveys, taking the feedback on from your team, they will feel happier and satisfied at work. And this will then improve loyalty and engagement. For the organisation, if we look back at the top quartile against the bottom quartile organisations, we can see for the organisation there are going to be business benefits. As an organisation, you'll gain that insight into what really matters most to your employees. You'll be able to establish those baseline measurements, which I'm going to come on and talk about what those might be. You'll also be able to improve retention levels and understand the employee experience better. And we've talked about now that employee retention levels are going to be critical for you. This shortage of skills is only going to get worse. One way to think about it is, if you knew when you recruited that you wouldn't find the skills that you were looking for, what would you do differently? And really, as a result of improved employee engagement, you'll have improved innovation, performance, and profitability. Those of you that have worked with me for a long time, I know there are some of you on this call will have heard me saying, my goal really is, when I work with organizations, is that those people in those organizations are running into work on a Monday morning, excited to be there, excited for the challenge. And that's the job that we need to create, that we need to pull ourselves as leaders out of the trenches in terms of doing, and really look at what is going on with our people and spending more time with them. So what I wanted to do was share with you how an independent employee engagement survey might work. So you decide when you want to conduct the survey. In my case, I would give the team about 10 working days to complete the survey. The team are then invited to participate in the survey through an online platform. So employees either receive an email or a web link, dependent on what the organisation wants. Employees are asked then to rate the organisation against those 7 engagement drivers, from strongly agree to strongly disagree. All responses, again, the benefits of an independent survey, so all responses are confidential. You will not see who said what, but you're going to get their feedback. So not only are we asking people to score those 7 engagement drivers on a strongly agree to strongly disagree, we also ask them for comments to provide some narrative in terms of what's going well and what isn't. So there's no personally identifying information is provided or requested from employees. Once the agreed date is reached, the survey is closed. The data is collected in a dashboard format, highlighting promoters, passives, and detractors. So promoters are the strongly agree and agree. The passives are the neutrals in the middle, and the detractors are the strongly disagree and agree. Clearly, as an organisation, you want less detractors and more promoters. And also the passives are those people sitting on the fence. Those are people that are also not. The passives are not engaged, but the detractors are actively not engaged. The overall results are shared with the organisation, including comments. And then what I do is I meet to discuss the results and highlight those key priorities moving forward. So what are some of the key engagement metrics that you need to focus on? So I'm aware that some of you are on this call and you may be using another provider in terms of employee engagement. And that's great, because what you're getting here is some knowledge about the metrics that have been calculated, getting a better understanding of those, and being able to take action after this. So one of the key metrics is the average score across all questions. The employee net promoter score, which I'm going to come and explain, employee satisfaction, employee retention, absence levels, and then productivity and performance metrics. So again, what I'd be urging you to think about is the metrics that you will use to measure the success of your organisation may be more financial. And in this current competitive climate, what I'm urging you to do is to start looking at employee engagement metrics. What are my average days absence in my organisation? What are my employee retention levels like on an annual basis? How are they comparing even over the last 3 years? I will be surprised if your employee retention rates aren't reducing and your absence rates are increasing over the last 3 years. because it is a trend. And then looking at even those against the productivity and performance metrics, what impact is it having on those? Can you see any trends there? So moving on to explain a few of those. So I've highlighted the 7 engagement drivers that I'm using within the survey. So here what I've done is I've given an example of average scores across 8 areas. So the culture and values, health and well-being, communication and involvement, direction and performance, work processes, opportunities for growth, leadership, teamwork and relationships. And the final metric then is the overall satisfaction and loyalty. So the 7 engagement drivers plus the overall satisfaction and loyalty. What I'm doing is I'm calculating the promoters, passives and detractors. And then what you're getting is this dashboard, which if you're measuring over time and I'm conducting an employee survey for you on an annual basis, then we can look at that trend data. So what was 2023, what was 2024, and then what is the difference in that? And again, if you're using another provider, I'd urge you to go back and look at your last couple of surveys and try to produce this data for yourself in a spreadsheet so that you can see it and understand it. Again, those of you that know me of old will say, measure the right things and the right things get done. But again, we can't manage what we don't measure. Metrics are important in terms of managing processes. We cannot improve if we're simply guessing how we're doing. So this is a really good action for you to go back and have a look at if you've got existing surveys and start going back to those and looking at what you found previously. And that will identify what you need to do moving forward. So I mentioned the employee net promoter score. So what we do here is this question is a globally recognized question. How likely would you recommend your organization as a good place to work? The detractors are the 0 to 6. So employees are asked to measure this on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 to 6 are detractors, 7 and 8 passives, and the promoters are 9 and 10. What we do when we find a score in terms of a percentage, we take away the promoters from detractors and we get a net promoter score. Anything between 10 and 50 is good, and plus 50 is excellent. Clearly anything below 10 and into the minus numbers are where we would find a real area of improvement. So how likely are you to recommend this organisation as a good place to work is a real loyalty measurement and a globally recognised measurement. So taking action. When you get the results of your survey, you want to share the results. Again, asking the question even of your employees in your survey, do you think we'll take action in relation to this survey? Always an interesting one to look at what their response is. You really do need to share the results, discuss the results with them, establish key areas moving forward, develop action plans to improve, and monitor and review how you are progressing. With the annual review again, an annual employee survey, really critical again in today's environment. So what are some of the things that you could do to improve employee engagement? What I've said this morning is measure and track employee engagement yearly. You really do need to train managers to be great leaders. If managers are responsible for 70% of the variance of employee engagement, that has to be a top priority. I've already said managers influence how people feel. So we need to make sure that we've got managers who can be great leaders, enabling their team to bring their best selves to work. We've got to create the right culture and communication channels. So we've got to be thinking about what are our values, how do we bring those to life? Do people understand those? And also looking at the channels we have to communicate, to hear what people are saying and what we need to change and improve. We need to create a great employee experience. We talk about the customer experience and those touch points. Again, what we need to be thinking about the lifetime of an employee's experience in the organisation and those touch points. How do we want it to feel? What do we want them to experience? Provide training for your team to ensure that they can perform at their best. Helping people to understand what it is they need to improve to be able to perform better. And also considering your well-being offer. Because if you consider your well-being offer and people feel well, they'll feel more satisfied and fulfilled with life, and therefore able to perform much better. And that also impacts on your absence levels. So that's an easy one. If you can help to reduce your absence levels as a result of helping people improve their well-being, everybody's going to win. I'm aware of our time, and now that we're just coming to the end, just looking at maybe how I could help you with this area. So as you know, I've said I conduct employee engagement surveys, I can run leadership team workshops, conduct leadership assessments, workplace workshops and coaching. If you've signed up today, you'll be on my distribution list and you'll receive my fortnightly emails on key topics that I think leaders need to be aware of, and also attend these free webinars. If you're interested in attending my next webinar, which is 2 weeks today, it's on fostering psychological safety in SMEs, and that's a beginner's guide. You'll be able to do that using the link on Crowdcast. So if you just look at my channel on Crowdcast, you'll be able to sign up there if you'd like to do so. And lastly, then, all I have to do is to say thank you for joining me this morning. I hope in the short 30 minutes that we had, slightly over it, you got some information to help you think about employee engagement, why it's important, and how you could improve it. If you're interested in finding out more about even prices in terms of employee surveys, please do get in touch. It does depend on the size of the organisation and whether you also want team dashboards. So it's just the level of detail that's involved, and that will depend on the price. Thank you for joining me. Feel free to drop any comments in the chat box in terms of what you heard, or even if there are any topics that you'd like me to cover in the future. Thank you for joining me this morning and taking time out before you start your working day. Have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you again. Take care.